Yeah, I'm curious if Starboy is actually based on someone visually. Uh,
I think I read somewhere that Starboy was based on Tab Hunter.
because if I look at Deke Slayton, one of the original seven Mercury 7 astronauts,
Hmm.
if you look at him, man, Deke Slayton and Starboy look an awful lot alike. And it goes beyond just the haircut.
Hmm.
It's the ears, the jawline, the lines around the mouth.
Well, in this issue, I would say that's definitely a possibility because this would have been 1966.
Mm-hmm.
Starboy actually debuted in 61 back in Adventure 282.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember who
But the
drew
Mercury
that.
7 were announced in 1959.
Were they?
Yeah,
Oh, did Starboy have his crew cut in Adventure 282? That's a good question.
that is a good question.
Would you like me to check? I
That'd be
have one.
great.
Fortunately, I keep my comic books numbered for just such an
Yeah, I
emergency.
was looking at all of the.
Literally.
I was looking at all of them. The only other one could be Alan Shepard, but he doesn't have the same look that Deke does in this. Now, I'm not saying that Kurt Swan models his characters on people.
Oh, he does. If you look at Kurt Swan's Supergirl covers in the Silver Age, she is 100% Marilyn Monroe.
I think it's Deke. I for some reason I just want to say that, but I can't find anything that says yay or nay on this. I've seen
Well,
Starboy, and also in the search result it returns Neil Armstrong, but those two
right.
don't look anything alike.
Well, and the buzz cut is unusual, especially among superhero type characters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the thing. I mean, he was created by George Papp,
Right, and Otto
and
Binder,
Papp,
sure.
yeah, Papp did in fact draw him in that first issue with a buzz cut, a very distinct buzz cut, but of course a different sort of facial shape.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that given the possibility of here's a character with a buzz cut, Kurt, draw this guy, saying that especially, in the mid 60s, Kurt Swan went, hey, Deke Slayton is a guy with a buzz cut.
Yeah,
Because I'm looking at Deke Slayton right now and I do agree with you. It's definitely there.
yeah. It's interesting though. He was grounded in 1962
Mhm.
because of an irregular heart rhythm.
Right,
So by the time this issue would have come out, he would have been, basically just mission control.
right.
But I don't know. Maybe it's just that visual of Starboy. And what year did the song Starman come out?
I want to say 1973. Wasn't
Okay,
that a
so
David Bowie song?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm going to say 73.
Okay,
I want to say because it was off Ziggy Stardust.
yeah, because Deke was then later cleared to fly after March of 1972, and
Right,
he was assigned the docking module pilot in the Apollo Soyuz test mission at the age of 51. At the time, becoming the oldest man in space.
right.
So I don't know. I'm going to say that Starboy looks suspiciously like one of the original NASA Mercury 7 astronauts. That's just me.
That's just you. I actually agree.
Come at me, people.
They were the heroes from the future, teenagers protecting the universe from those that would sow the seeds of chaos. Each had unique powers and abilities, and though they often had their differences, they came together to save the day as the Legion of Superheroes. Now you can be a part of their adventures and learn the history of the future in the Legion Clubhouse. Adventure Comics number 342, The Legionnaire Who Killed. Published March 1966. Written by Edmund Hamilton with art by Kurt Swan. Self-defense or cold-blooded murder? The trial of Starboy will decide.
Apparently, Matthew, as a Legion member, you are not allowed to kill anyone.
Yes, which makes sense. It's a Silver Age superhero comic.
We'll get more into this death, and then this is a super I know people hate it when I say this. This is a super political issue because you have those that want to follow the letter of the law in this issue and those that want to follow the spirit of the law.
Who want to interpret the intent
Yeah.
in a specific situation where it seems that Starboy has no other choice.
And this is a fascinating issue. Again, nothing legal in this. There's absolutely no legality in this. But it does bring up this question of, should we be following the absolute letter of the law? Whatever this code says, that is what we have to follow, and anyone who breaks this law shall be banished from the Legion of Superheroes? Or is this a document that is supposed to be interpreted in specific ways so that as certain situations arise, we could bring this to a council, perhaps the leadership of our Legion, and have them reconsider some of these actions? But no, it appears that the Legion of Superheroes are very draconian in their interpretation of the law.
Well, the thing about it is Starboy is on trial.
Yes.
In Adventure 342. And the prosecutor, for lack of a better word, procedurally speaking, is the relatively emotionless Brainiac 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Brainiac taking a very literalist approach to the document that clearly states in the Legion Code, which I don't think we've heard this part of the Legion Code before this issue. I don't recall it, and I went back digging for it, and I can't find it. I think this may be the first appearance of that portion of the Legion Code. But essentially, we find out that a Legionnaire who kills must face a court-martial board, essentially, with Brainiac as a prosecutor, and strangely enough, Superboy as the defense.
Okay, so I like Superboy as the defense, even though he has little understanding of 30th century law, or at this point, what is this, 25th century law?
This would be the 30th century.
30th century. So he has little understanding of 30th century law. So from that standpoint, it feels like Superboy becomes this...
doofus?
Not really a doofus. It becomes a guy who is like, I feel that this is the right thing to do. Even though I kind of agree with this, I feel like at some point in my future, I will be killing a supervillain by breaking his neck, and I will need to use this as a defense that I was only protecting everyone else on the planet. So I better get this Starboy off now so that I can set up my defense for the future.
The Zod precedent.
The Zod precedent. That's right.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite Tom Clancy novel. Either the Zod precedent or the Dr. Octopus affair, one of the two.
So I do appreciate Superboy really coming into this with this kind of good intent of wanting to follow the spirit of the law. But it's clear by panel 2 of this issue that there is no way that Superboy is going to win this case. Because in panel 2, while everyone else is playing kissy games, Brainiac and Superboy are playing a game of Space-opoly.
Space-opoly.
And Superboy is losing to Brainiac.
Well, it's Brainiac. Why would you play Space-opoly with Brainiac? He knows that the trick is to get the cheap purple properties
to get all of the spaceports,
build up and build up and build up, and it's not worth going after the Park Place and the Boardwalk spaceport.
He's going after all the utilities. That's what he's going after.
It's what he's doing. And I do really love this sequence because we've seen a lot of times the Legionnaires off duty doing things that seem like they're more suitable to 11 and 12-year-olds. This may be the first time we see something that reminds me these are supposed to be 16-year-olds because, Tinya has learned a new dance called the Shurg, which is totally made up from the world Janda, which, by the way, is real. Janda exists. It's just the Shurg that was fake.
So they're having a dance party. It's like a day off for the Legion of Superheroes. And the cool thing about this, I will want to say this. We've talked a lot of times about the Legion roll call, about the Legion scroll. What I've seen in the last couple of issues is that we've seen the mission monitor board that lists all of the Legion members and where they are currently located. And this, in a weird way, is starting to become that roll call that says, here are all the Legion members. Here's their names. Here's what they look like. Don't forget this, kids, because they will become important 50 years from now.
Yeah. Although, looking at the mission monitor board, unless he's behind the word balloon, Cosmic Boy is not on the board.
No
But
Cosmic Boy.
I do like the use of the mission monitor board, and I like the fact that, we're in the 30th century, so having the computer do this, the computerized spin the bottle, is nice.
Yeah.
I would like to point out Light Lass and Shrinking Violet are both playing computerized spin the bottle, and this may be the origin of their later relationship. The
It might
computer
be.
is
I mean,
trying to decide who'd have the most fun kissing whom. Light Lass is kissing Chameleon Boy,
Mm-hmm.
and Shrinking Violet is standing there going, no, my turn. She's about to tap him on the shoulder and cut in and show him how
Well,
it's done.
I think that's because Element Lad is sitting there at the table.
Element Lad is running the computer because
okay.
Element Lad and Invisible Kid could also kiss. That's fine.
They could be there too. There is that little glowy bit behind Light Lass and Chameleon Boy.
Yep, I'm just saying.
But here's the thing. The Invisible Kid is sitting there going, hey, Starboy, why don't you come in and get in on this kissing game? And Starboy's like, no, thanks.
No, thanks.
And then Duo Damsel and Invisible Kid are like, why does he never want to play any kissing games? And here's the thing that before, if you remember everything about Dream Girl and his infatuation with Dream Girl, if you just read that first sentence, funny, Starboy never seems to have time for romance. And knowing that in the future, several of these characters reveal themselves to be bisexual, homosexual, etc., it made me wonder for that brief moment, is Starboy one of those that turn out to be gay? And so I did a quick search, and in Urban Dictionary, there are two different definitions for Starboy. The first one is a womanizer, a philanderer, a man who has sex with many women. And the other one is a homosexual male. Really? Yeah.
I had never heard that.
I had not heard that either, and I found that very strange.
I think he's just seriously hung up on Dream Girl.
Oh, yeah, because as he wanders down the hall of the Legion Clubhouse, he passes a spot and he goes, oh, there's the place where the last time that I saw good old Dream Girl, she's always on my mind. And then he goes to the archive collection and starts playing You're Always on My Mind.
Is it the Pet Shop Boys version?
No, it's the Willie Nelson version.
The classical music, the Pet Shop
Boys. The classic section.
Well, how could you not love a woman whose costume is a one-piece bathing suit, high heels, a world championship belt, and the world's biggest barrette? I mean, she's a fashion plate. She's a platinum blonde.
Listen, there's no time, Matthew, to talk about Dream Girl because it is once again time to have new applicants for the Legion Clubhouse.
Tryouts!
It's interesting because we get several new members this time. Who's trying out this month?
Well, our first applicant is E. Davis Esther. I don't remember which planet he's from, but it's probably something like Fnorkel. Better known as the Calamity King, who can cause accidents and disasters just by waving his hand.
Oh man, we don't need an Archie Andrews on our team.
No. And that's exactly what Brainiac says. We don't need a jinx. Get out before the whole building collapses.
In the meantime, he's actually causing stuff to collapse.
He literally is taking down one of the support beams. And our next contestant is Ulu Vac, better known as Color Kid, who can change the color of anything to anybody.
Now, he does not become a member of the Legion of Superheroes, but they do suggest that he go and try out with the Legion of Substitute Heroes.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is Color Kid is one of those recommended names from a previous letters column.
Yep, back in Adventure 337, Color Kid was suggested by one of the readers. And interestingly, there's another one in this issue's letter column who also ends up being a member of the Legion of Substitute Heroes. And Color Kid and this issue's suggestion, Porcupine Pete, actually end up being two of the biggest additions to the Substitute Heroes. Ulu, Color Kid, is really the first lasting addition to the subs. When he joins after the events of this issue, Color Kid is one of the Substitute Heroes like forever. One thing that we do also need to note for those people out there who are of a literalist and or anal bent, both Calamity King and Color Kid do serve with the Legion of Superheroes, but it's during the 5-year gap when there's a massive crisis and all the good heroes quit. And the Legion is led by Timberwolf, who is desperate for members.
Right.
So Calamity Kid is actually a member of the Legion, one of several members of the Legion who is never actually shown as a member of the Legion because it all takes place in the 5-year gap.
Yeah, stuff that happens
in the future of the past.
Yeah.
Or the past of the future of the past.
So we do get to see a couple other people try out. Of course, they're rejected, told to snark off or whatever the kids in the future say.
No, the kids in the future say, here's your parting gift, a flying belt.
Yes. In the meantime, Starboy is going to go visit his parents. They're doing some astronomical observations on a different planet, so he's going to go over there. And when he lands, he meets this kid that's just hanging out. That's just like, oh, yeah, your parents left, and they said I could stay in their cabin.
My name's Jan. Yeah. How are you?
And no sooner does Starboy land, but another ship lands, and this kid comes out. Guy, whatever. This guy looks like a cross between Buck Rogers and Prince Valiant. In the way that Kurt Swan draws him and in the just plain color style that he's presented in.
Yeah. We can't call him Prince Rogers because that's actually Prince's name.
Yes. It's a crazy costume. I mean, it's a bit like, it's not Bubble Helmet Science Police, but it's like Pith Helmet with space gear, space jockey gear that you would expect. I mean, it's really like, I know you like Kurt Swan and all, but this is like a super retro, like even retro for the 60s look at what spacemen would dress like. And this guy is totally out of a Buck Rogers thing.
I agree. And I actually kind of like that because he feels like, because he's kind of retro, he feels like he's older than the Legionnaires.
Oh, well, again, I know you like Kurt Swan, but when Kurt Swan draws these teenagers, these are not teenagers. These are middle-aged people having a midlife crisis.
You're just mad about the hairlines.
It's just, they look old. They look older than teenagers. Anyway, this guy comes out and he goes, Dream Girl won't marry me because she's got a thing for you, so I shall kill you. And Starboy's like, pshaw, I'm going to use my star gravitations and make your gun weigh 1,000,000 billion pounds. And the guy holds up this shield, and apparently you can bounce Starboy's rays off of a shield.
Yes, it's made of inertron, more than likely.
Yeah, that's really cool. And suddenly Starboy becomes super, super heavy. He can barely land. And Dream Girl is coming down for a landing. And Starboy's like, oh my God, this guy's going to kill me if I don't do something first. So he scrambles and he crawls. I mean, imagine that moment in the movies where he's struggling to grab the gun.
Dun, 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 dun.
And just at the last minute, he picks up the gun and he fires. And kills this dude.
Yes. Who, by the way, just murdered a random teenager.
Yes, just a rando kid.
Which to me makes a strong case that Starboy can in fact say he feared for his life. This guy's clearly a murderer. But, Legion Constitution and all.
Anyway, Dream Girl saw everything. They go to the science police. The science police totally clear Starboy, saying, you know what, it's totally self-defense. It's totally right. You're good to go. But then when he gets back to the clubhouse, everyone's like, murderer! Murderer!
You must stand court-martial for your activities.
And that is where we get into the bulk of the issue that the beginning of this episode started with, because now it's Superboy pitting his brain and might against Brainiac 5. And it doesn't go good for Superboy. And there are some really cool moments in this, because as Superboy is trying to mount a defense, we get fake flashbacks.
We do. Brainiac actually starts it off by explaining times that Element Lad and Colossal Boy and Cosmic Boy were in mortal danger, but used their powers in a non-lethal way and did not kill someone who was ready to kill them. And it's actually really, really bad for Superboy's defense.
Oh, yeah, because at one point, Brainiac is like, look, there was a tree right there. You could have aimed at the big old branch of that tree and had it crash down on him and only paralyze the guy.
Right, or crushed his skull.
You chose to kill him.
He'd still be alive.
And even Superboy is like, look, here are all these other times that, people had to kill, including you, Brainiac, when you shot and killed this guy that was coming at you on the planet Arnak. And then Brainiac's like, well, that's right. I did shoot him. But the rules for me are different. The rules for me are different than the rules for everyone else.
And also, That guy was clearly a robot, and
Okay,
Brainiac.
I have a question about that.
Okay.
Because did we not just go through an issue not too long ago where someone believed that he was a robot and there were all these other sentient robots around? Is that still, I mean, yeah, he killed a robot, a sentient robot. Is that still taking a life?
That's a good question. I would have to go to the United Federation of Planets versus Commander Data,
yeah.
a precedent set in 1995 and or 2312, which is still 700 years before the events of this story, even though it took place 30 years after. And I will say that Riker is a really good trombone player.
Still doesn't answer the question, but anyway, apparently robots have no value,
rights.
no worth.
Well, it's
and
a
so
Star
it's okay
Wars
if
universe.
it's okay if you just want to kill them.
Right. It's a Star Wars universe. There's no life signs on that pod. We'll just let it go.
Mm-hmm. So it comes down to a vote. Everybody has pled their case, and now it's up to the entire membership to get out there and vote.
And there's something interesting about this membership vote that I realized and then I wonder about.
Mm-hmm.
Because the entire membership of the Legion is allowed to vote.
Right.
Including honorary member Elastic Lad.
Yes, but
not honorary member Insect Queen or honorary member Pete Ross.
That's what I was going to ask. Where's Pete Ross? So here's how everybody voted. Duo Damsel votes not guilty. Chameleon Boy votes guilty. Saturn Girl votes guilty, although she looks sad that she had to cast that vote.
Yes.
Superboy, obviously not guilty. Element Lad, guilty. Phantom Girl, not guilty. Light Lass, not guilty. Brainiac 5, guilty, obviously. Shrinking Violet, it's like all the girls except for Saturn Girl are like voting not guilty.
And also Superboy really proves that he comes from 1957 when he says they're all on your side because of your lovely romance with Dream Girl.
Yeah. Mon-El votes not guilty. Sun Boy votes guilty. Ultra Boy votes not guilty. Lightning Lad not guilty. Cosmic Boy guilty. Colossal Boy votes guilty. Jimmy Olsen guilty. Jimmy Olsen guilty.
Jimmy, you are such a sap. Supergirl, not guilty.
Yep.
All of the invulnerable Legionnaires vote not guilty, and
Matter
Superboy claims
guilty. Invisible Kid guilty.
Superboy claims that being invulnerable, they have a greater appreciation of what it might be like to be in a life-threatening situation, and that's why all the invulnerable Legionnaires voted not guilty.
So these are all of the current members of the Legion of Superheroes.
Except for Insect Queen and Pete Ross, who are honoraries, yes.
Right. But again, Jimmy
and
Olsen.
Of course,
Jimmy Olsen
Bouncing Boy
is Jimmy Olsen.
Not,
he's still honorary, right? He's not full Legion member with his Jimmy Olsen boy powers.
The Elastic Lad situation refers to him as honorary.
Okay.
But apparently Jimmy gets a full vote here, even though, strangely, Bouncing Boy doesn't.
Well,
because
he's not a member.
He doesn't have powers. I don't know.
It's interesting. I mean, we have the full lineup right here, and it comes down to 10 guilty, 9 not guilty. By order of the Legion of Superheroes, Starboy is expelled.
Yes. And he has to walk down a gauntlet of his friends and leave the clubhouse. But, wonderfully, immediately after leaving the clubhouse, his dream girl arrives in the form of Dream Girl.
Yeah.
Who then says, "You're not alone, honey. I've joined the Legion of Substitute Heroes, and you're welcome too."
And he goes and joins the Substitute Heroes.
Yeah, and Polar Boy is like, "We will offer you a new start as one of us." And again, this is still a point where the subs are treated respectfully. They are not yet a joke.
Yeah, no. This is like the AFC and the NFC.
Yeah. But interestingly, and this is something that's very telling because you don't necessarily see this kind of continuity. The last panel says, "Starboy is the 4th Legionnaire to meet disaster. Who will be the next victim of the Legion jinx?"
Oh, some good teasing there of what's coming up in a future issue.
It's almost Marvel style setup where
each
issue kind of just dovetails into the next.
If you enjoy the show, we would appreciate your support. You can find out more and become a Legion Clubhouse member at patreon.com/major spoilers.
So one of the biggest problems DC is having around this time is that Marvel's kind of eating their lunch.
Yeah, 1966, Marvel has really just... Marvel is the big new hot thing. It is the new hotness. It's the next big thing. It's the Bill Goldberg, if you will.
What's interesting is there are stories that talk about these DC meetings where they're sitting around trying to analyze everything about a Marvel comic, trying to figure out, why is this Marvel comic selling better? Is it because it has more red on the cover? Is it because the font is bigger? Is it because they have monkeys? Is it what is it? And it's interesting because one of the neat things that happened with Marvel Comics is, even though things kind of started off as these kind of little done-in-one stories that had little bits and pieces that tied into greater stories, what quickly became apparent is if you wanted to follow along with what was going on in Spider-Man or Captain America or what was soon to come the Avengers, then you better be reading everything month to month to month. There were there was this expectation that you were reading this all of the time.
Right. And they were putting out 8 books a month.
Yeah, that's all they were allowed to put out at the time.
Exactly, because DC handled their distribution.
Yeah, which is, again, crazy.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a corporate setup. At that point in time, DC was one of the distribution arms. Marvel had a deal with them. And the production side people were like, oh my God, these comics are outselling us. What are we going to do? And the other guys are like, we don't care. They're paying us to distribute the comics.
I know, but it's weird that that one of the stipulations that they put in was that you could only do 8 issues a month. And again, Marvel was eating their lunch. It's interesting. I bring this up because it's interesting. In this issue, a couple of things happen that kind of set up an expectation that you as a comic book reader need to be reading this stuff month to month. And the first one comes in the very first page, the second page actually, where Invisible Kid and Duo Damsel are having a conversation. And he's like, oh boy, Starboy never seems to have time for romance. And Duo Damsel says he's carrying the torch for Dream Girl. You remember her. She came from the planet Naltor, and she has the power of being able to see the near future and joined the Legion for a while. She joined under false pretense in order to help out us out secretly. And so it's almost like, hey, kids, remember this? Or if you're new to the party, we don't need to put an editor's box in, but we're telling you everything about her in a single panel or two. So that sets that up. And then the second thing that basically tells the reader you need to be doing this month to month is that very last panel of the issue that says, Starboy is the fourth Legionnaire to meet a disaster. Who will be the next victim? Find out next month.
Yep.
So we have Starboy, Bouncing Boy, Lightning Lass. No, not Lightning Lass. Lightning Lad with his arm. And who is the...
Duo Damsel.
Duo Damsel. That's right. Duo Damsel.
Lost one of her lives.
That's right. So 4 of those down. Oh my gosh. I just found this interesting that maybe slowly DC is starting to catch on that ongoing continuity may be the key to continued sales.
It's definitely interesting to watch. And DC does pick up on it a little bit slower than Marvel, obviously. But I will tell you, by the end of 1968, Legion stories are all about interconnected continuity and things that came before and all the people that we know. And in a way, it makes it difficult because if you look at the Legion reboots that we've seen, 5, 6 of them to date, they always take us back to 1968. They take us back to the point right about now when this comic is all about young teen friends. And then when we restart, we never seem to get past this point where everybody is like young teen friends.
We saw what happened with the 5 Year Later stuff and how that was just a horrible disaster. Everybody's lives are in shambles.
It was very 80s.
It was very dark. Yeah. We also saw what happened with a Zero Hour, and then the Archie Legion that came after that. Basically, all young kids again.
You could also make the argument that the Legionnaires book that came out about a year and a half before 0 Hour, where the clone teenage versions of the characters from literally right about now, came back and were stolen by the Time Trapper and put in time-space suspension and woke up with their miserable grown-up selves. And then they had both books, one with the teenagers and one with the grown-ups.
Yep. And then we had the 3-boot Legion, which
Yeah.
with Mark Waid doing that with the total. Let's borrow from pop culture and make that an integral part to the story, but also let's keep everybody teenagers.
Sure. And then I would say even the retro boot Legion that Jeff Johns brought back after Final Crisis and Legion of Three Worlds counts as a new iteration because all of these people are maybe a little further along, but all of these people are basically the guys that they are right now here in these issues.
And I think that's interesting because number one, as fans, and this is a bigger discussion on fandom, but I think as fans, we like to sit there and go, I remember when this happened, when I was able to go to the store, even in the late 70s, early 80s, and pick up reprints of these Legions tales for super cheap and be able to read them. And the fact that these things were ongoing, connected stories that I'll go so far as to say that the Legion of Superheroes is that super secret, ultra elite club of comic book fans. Now that, of course, has its own negative connectivity to it.
Sure.
But if you knew the Legion and you knew all their little backstory and histories, and if you knew how these things were tied into one another, you were a true comic book fan.
Agreed. I mean, the Legion was the place where a lot of the APAs and the fandom stuff really caught fire. There had been fans from the very earliest days of comic books who were into, writing everything down and knowing everything about every issue.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Legion came out, it became kind of the thing. There are people, dozens and dozens of people. If you go and talk to, a Colleen Doran, you talk to like Mark Waid, you talk to people who grew up in this time frame, who know chapter and verse the adventure comic stories and who did what, when, and where.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting and it's fascinating, and we're seeing it slowly start to happen as the Legion take over Adventure Comics.
Adventure Comics number 343, The Evil Hand of the Luck Lords. Published April 1966. Written by Edmund Hamilton with art by Kurt Swan. Could a group of strange aliens be behind the Legion's recent woes?
In the last issue, Matthew, we saw that one of the Legion members met with a terrible fate. And that brings us to this issue, asking the major question, are the Legion of Superheroes jinxed?
Okay, don't you know that it's bad luck to say that?
I don't know. We get to meet the Luck Lords in this episode. These people that go around... These people that are supposedly going around selling you little tchotchkes and little trinkets that will ward off the bad luck. And if you happen to fly through the Gorilla Nebula, then you are in big trouble, boy.
First thing, never trust a Gorilla Nebula, okay? Just don't. It's wrong.
This is a really weird issue because one thing after another happens and people are like, oh my gosh, you guys are jinxed. You guys are doing these bad things and bad things are happening to you. Look at you. Lightning Lad, you died and lost an arm. Look at you, Duo Damsel. You used to be Triplicate Girl. Look at you, Starboy. You actually used to be a member of the Legion of Superheroes. Look at you, Overweight Kid. You used to be Bouncing Boy.
He's actually svelte when he doesn't have
actually
his
pretty
bouncing
slim,
powers.
Yeah.
But yeah. And is that all?
Well, I mean,
due
Invisible
to the Jinx Stones
Invisible
of Planet
Kid
Durla?
Invisible Kid accidentally turns invisible and can't become uninvisible.
Right. Shrinking Violet can't shrink down.
That's only because they were kissing and making out.
Probably in the last issue, and now they have super mono.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's actually Durlan mono, so it keeps changing shape. But yeah, it's interesting though to see this sort of continuity, what today we would refer to as world building, taking those bits and pieces of the story and going, hey, these kids really have had it rough. Can we make some drama out of that? Even, Gorilla Nebula. Don't trust a Gorilla Nebula.
Well, it's really weird because in the previous issue, we were looking at, a philosophical question of letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. Both these issues are written by Edmund Hamilton. This issue, though, we're looking at, yeah, you're right, true world building because we're finding out all of these superstitions of the various worlds that are in the DC universe.
Yeah. And I am fascinated by one thing that is completely off topic. The spaceship that Brainiac and Sunboy are flying in the first pages of this issue looks exactly like the spaceship that the kid makes in the end of Titan AE to escape from the Drifter colony.
What's even more weird is later on the issue, they find a busted up spaceship, and it's got the number 4 on it in a circle. Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Fantastic Four, they were in space. They got bombarded by radiations.
This is their spaceship. Get into space. They didn't even get out of the atmosphere.
This is their spaceship. You always wanted to know this is a DC making a nod to the Fantastic Four. And this isn't just like some dopey looking number 4. This is Fantastic Four. This is DC putting a jab out there, but thinking that, remember, we were just talking about how DC was like, we can't figure out what we're doing wrong and why Marvel is beating us. Maybe if we include a Fantastic Four reference, it will bring us luck.
I suppose it's possible. They had that reference to Spider-Man a couple of issues ago.
So what's going on with these Luck Lord dudes?
Well, these aren't actually the Luck Lords, but the Luck Lords of Ventura reputedly have the, I don't know, sort of a control of luck, or like they have a surfeit of luck. They're like the guys who handle luck and sell the luck to people. But they're all, for instance, Sunboy and Brainiac 5 start out in a crash. Brainiac 5 takes a shot to the head. Sunboy gets a broken wrist. The pilot of the ship is like, oh yeah, I never get hurt because I'm from Ventura and I bought this Starstone. And if I give them $1,000 a month, they say that the bad luck won't come back. But yes, and interestingly, as soon as Sunboy comes back and says, hey, I heard about this, maybe, we should get a stone, Saturn Girl is like, ha, silly superstition. And she goes on for 2 pages, essentially going, on Jupiter, they believe that a rainbow is unlucky.
Yeah. It's really crazy world building. I'll be honest, I didn't like this story. I thought it was silly. The only thing that it does, and it's the only thing that they really don't bring up, is the idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, they don't really delve too much into that because this is really kind of, and I don't want to say retro because we are literally reading 50-year-old stories.
Right.
But this is kind of a throwback to those early days of the Legion where everything was just kind of wild, weird stuff, and there wasn't really anything other than what crazy creature, what weird planet, what strange 4-headed thing can we do? But they do one thing that I think is extremely skillful.
Okay.
As the issue opens, the team is like, oh, stuff and nonsense, and
well, not
Chameleon Boy.
Half the boy is like stuff and nonsense. The other half is like, oh my gosh, there's a life-size Prody on your shoulder. That means you're going to crash into something big, Chameleon Boy.
Chameleon Boy is like, oh no, a bad luck stone. And then he walks over to another room and says, Prody, stop playing with the Legion of Super Pets, whom we have not seen in about 14 issues and are now reminding you of the existence of.
Yes, because they do come later in the issue and save the day.
But it feels very natural that Prody, being a member of the Super Pets, would be playing with his pals. And it's interesting just the way they throw that in. Chameleon Boy is like, okay, Prody, let's go. And the Super Pets are all sniffing him, going, what the hell?
Yeah. Or
in the case of Comet, who was a centaur, who turned into a man, who turned into a horse. I don't know.
He's got a thing for Supergirl. That's all we have to say.
That's all we read.
Really
or maybe
weird.
He was a horse who became a centaur and then turned into a man.
So
I don't know.
It turns out the Luck Lords are using something called the super hypnotic long-range ray, which they can zap at people and kind of hypnotize them into doing things that they said they didn't want to do. But again, if we go back to a self-fulfilling prophecy, that's kind of what's going on here. Basically, a self-fulfilling prophecy is you have this belief or expectation that something's going to happen in the future, and it manifests because you deem it so. So, for example, Matthew wakes up and he's like, I'm just going to have the worst day in the world. And then he stubs his toe getting out of bed, and then the hot water's been all used up because his daughter's taking a really long shower. And then he gets to work, and his favorite chair is broken, and he's like, look, see what I told you? I told you this was going to be a horrible day.
Yep. And it really is interesting, though, to see them trying to play with this is a scientific future, but also wanting to have people go, well, what about the bad luck? And it's interesting that you'll see some of the Legionnaires, the more mindful, the more leadery Legionnaires like Brainiac 5 and Saturn Girl saying no, and Goober's like Pouncing Boy going, well, I accidentally set the planet clock backwards. Dipstick.
Well, but again, it's so fascinating because what the Luck Lords have done is beyond the merchandising that they got going on.
Merchandising.
Beyond the merchandising, they've basically built up a cult following. And as you alluded to earlier, there have been religions that have been set up around self-fulfilling prophecies and this idea of luck, and that if you pay us money, good things will come to you. And they're using that self-fulfilling prophecy idea, both in this comic and in real life, to bilk people out of their money.
Yep. And they actually, I mean, they handle it kind of interestingly because the Legionnaires aren't really mad about this. They aren't upset that someone is trying to sell good luck the way, you know, you might see in a slightly later tale in the 70s or the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But they do, in fact, fall into the trap of worrying that they're going to have bad luck too, which I can't decide whether that's one of those moments where, hey, they really are kids after all, or hey, these guys are all idiots.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just a really weird story. And again, it kind of jumps in a couple of weird ways. I mean, it's some interesting world building that ultimately, like the Puppet Planet and like a Superboy planet, goes nowhere and is never seen again in a lot of these cases. So
the Luck Lords are seen again, thankfully.
Well, no, but the different planets that they're talking about, these superstitions never raise their heads ever again, ever.
We never hear about that stupid planet Jupiter.
Well, we certainly don't hear about the rainbows and how they bring you bad luck. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, she's a rainbow.
I don't know. It's a fun little story that kind of points out how, you know, this issue probably came out on a Friday the 13th. But it just kind of points out how silly and how wrapped up people can get into this belief of superstition.
Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of an indicator of how young they expected their audience to be.
Still, I mean, it's, again, I think they jump back and forth. I think they don't know how old their audience is at this point.
True. This feels like a story that's aimed at your 8 to 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
Your kids who are not quite adolescent, but are old enough to understand, well, Casper and Hot Stuff aren't fun anymore. But these Legion stories have a little bit of something extra, but they're still definitely young. And it's still something where all of the heroes fail. So the horse and the monkey and the dog and the cat show up to save the day. And they all have capes. So it's okay. Monkeys can't have bad luck, Stephen. It's a scientific fact.
Because they already have two monkeys' paws.
Exactly. And just like a horse, you know, how some people carry a rabbit's foot, some people carry a horse's foot.
Well, and a horse has 4 of them.
Exactly. And dogs are lucky and cats are evil. They don't even care.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. This issue is just lame.
This is, I like it for one reason. I like the way it stitches together bits and pieces of other stories to make this issue. And I feel like it's charming in a goofy way, but it also does that thing that we see in a lot of modern stories where they set up something that everybody knows about, the Luck Lords. Everybody knows about the Luck Lords, and they're totally a thing, you guys. And then they end the story.
None of the Legion of Superheroes have heard of the Luck Lords.
And they end the story by going, oh, well, maybe they weren't real at all. That happens all the time in modern comics. You know, it's that Kaiser Soze problem. It's the thing that, you know how Spider-Woman joined the Avengers in 2006, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, she didn't. A Skrull pretending to be Spider-Woman did. Spider-Woman herself
Everything you
didn't
know
join
is
the
wrong
Avengers until 2010. Exactly. And that's what this story is. It shoots itself in the foot, grabbing for a clever ending and an ad for Swing with Scooter.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I think we should do a whole podcast just Swing with Scooter.
No.
It'd be 9 episodes long.
There's something else that's going on in the late 60s, mid 60s, Matthew. What else is going on in the mid 60s that we should know from our histories? What is your BQ, Matthew?
My BQ is extremely high.
Let's find out,
Mine
shall
is
we?
almost a BBQ.
Brotherhood Week, February 20th through the 26th.
Mm-hmm.
What is your brotherhood quotient? Please answer the following, Matthew. Check one
All right.
column for each item listed. Test your likes and dislikes. You have the ability to dislike, like, so lukewarm, no thought, vacant. On the following. What are your thoughts on alligators?
Ugh.
Baptists.
Mmm.
Cabbage.
So.
Catholics.
Mmm.
Detective stories.
Vacant.
Foreigners.
Mmm.
Indians.
Wait, are we talking from India or Native Americans?
It just says Indians.
Actually, the answer is the same. Mmm.
Jews.
Mmm.
Long hair music.
Ugh.
Negroes.
Mmm.
And spiders.
Oh, I hate spiders.
Do you believe that all men, this is question B, do you believe that all men are created equal?
I do.
Do you think all young people should have the same chance for education, sports, and jobs?
I believe that old people like me should. Young people, no. Yes, I believe that.
It's interesting. It clearly says young people, not young men,
right.
Not young women, but young people should have the same chance for education, sports, and jobs. You said yes.
And they actually have an illustration that has women in it. So.
D, when a new child comes to your neighborhood, do you go out of your way to make him feel at home? Yes or no?
I'd like to say yes, but I think the answer is probably no.
How'd you make out on test A? All of us have some things we don't like. When they're vegetables or insects, no one cares. But when they're people, you hurt them and cheat yourself. If you scored 3 yes answers on questions B, C, and D, you're okay. If you didn't, you'd better start thinking about it.
I love, first of all, the fact that this is published in the comics in cooperation with the National Social Welfare Assembly, the Organization for Health, Welfare, and Recreation.
Right.
I really wonder if DC Comics, Marvel Comics, if these companies should not still be working in concert with agencies like that. Not that these agencies exist anymore.
Hey, look, for people that say comics are not political, this is a PSA. This is an ad placed right in the middle of this comic. Now, granted, it doesn't have Superman or the Legion of Superheroes doing stuff, but we've seen Superman swoop in and say, hey, boys and girls, are you picking on Johnny from another country? If so, rethink your attitudes. This is really good stuff. And it's fascinating because the precursor to Black History Month was created in 1926. That ran from, I'm trying to find the exact dates that it ran. I don't have it here in front of me. But it started in 1929. And then in the 1970s is when we got Black History Month. So it's interesting that Brotherhood Week is running essentially during the same time as Black History Month, which would come about in a few years as an official recognized month.
I think part of the reason that these type of PSAs have gone by the wayside is because some people would refer to it as a post-ironic society, where you can't do a straightforward message like that and just say, hey, wouldn't it be great if we weren't jerks?
Yeah.
Because people will be like, oh, well, that's corny, that's stupid, whatever. But I really like to see more of these type of messages. I'd like to see more pro-social messages in the books, not necessarily just textually, but metatextually and from the producers of these books themselves. And I know that's kind of a hot button issue for people right now, but I really feel like these PSAs and the expectations that these PSAs are setting for audiences that are kids, I feel like they have a positive message, that they had an effect and they could still have an effect.
Totally agree.
If people could find a way to actually put them in there without immediately getting shot down on the internet. So.
Here's the problem though, right? This is a public service announcement, and you and I have both worked in broadcasting. When do you run a PSA?
When you don't have any commercial time.
When you don't have any commercial time. And so when you go through these old comics and you see ads for sea monkeys and X-ray goggles and a Grandpa Munster's Dragula car.
I want one.
I know, right? One. But when you see these things, those are ads that are placed in there that DC is hoping to sell. And if they don't have anything that they can sell, like 238 magic tricks or 100 magnets for only 79 cents.
I want 100 magnets and 238 magic tricks.
You run these PSAs. And we've seen these PSAs on inside front covers. We've seen them in the middle of issues, etc. But unfortunately, I don't think that today, and again, comic books today don't run as many ads, or really any ads except inside front cover and back cover.
Right.
I don't think you would see a publisher actually step up and say, yes, we're going to include 4 additional pages of content so that we can include, or 1 page of PSA.
I don't think we would. And so much of what we do see in comics, when they're doing their house ads and they're go buy this or go download our show or watch the CW or whatever it is, I feel like it's all very self-serving. It's all about that late stage capitalism, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I really like this. I thought we should bring it up just because it's an interesting thing that they put in here at the time. This is essentially, civil rights are, really heating up and causing a lot of turmoil for good reason across the U.S. as we're trying to get rights for everyone. And I look at something like this today and I'm just like, wow, how relevant is this today?
Very relevant.
And it should be something that is shared. Matthew, what did we learn this week?
Well, Stephen, we learned that Shelley Moldoff inks over Kurt Swan pencils makes for some gorgeous comic books, man.
We also learned a little bit about self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's true. And we learned that Spaceopoly is a thing and only one sentient being in the universe has ever finished an entire game. Spaceopoly lad. We'll get to him in about 147 issues, so mark your calendars.
That wraps it up for this installment of the Legion Clubhouse. Thank you so much for downloading and checking us out this week. If you wouldn't mind, head over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review, or any place that serves up our podcast. Please leave some positive comments there. If you have any thoughts, reactions, etc., you can drop us an email at podcast@majorspoilers.com, or heck, use the comments section at majorspoilers.com, and let everyone else read your thoughts as well. Finally, as we reach the final episode of Season 3, one final request from you, or for you, from us, and that is to head to patreon.com/majorspoilers. Patreon.com/majorspoilers is where you can go, and if you find some value, some insight, some enjoyment from an episode of the Legion Clubhouse, keep it going by becoming a patron. Patreon.com/majorspoilers. That wraps it up for this installment of the Legion Clubhouse. It is adjourned, and until next time, I'm Good Luck Boy.
And I'm Kissing Practice Kid.
The Legion Clubhouse is a production of Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC, and is produced by Steven Schleicher. Your hosts were Matthew Peterson and Steven Schleicher. You can follow Matthew at Mighty King Cobra and Steven at Major Spoilers. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at Legion Clubhouse. If you have questions or comments, send them to podcast@majorspoilers.com. I'm Jason Inman. Until next time, eat it, Grandpa.
This podcast is copyright 2018 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.